The studio was buzzing with tension. Every camera fixed, every light glaring down like a spotlight on history itself. It was a night millions would never forget. U.S. President Donald Trump was about to face Captain Ibrahim Traoré live on air. The air crackled with electricity, a rare moment where two worlds collided on the same stage. Trump, known for his fierce pride and unshakable confidence, had never apologized to anyone publicly before. Yet here he was, in a place where millions watched, knowing this interview could change everything. Ibrahim Traoré, calm but unyielding, had prepared for months. A man of courage and truth, he carried the weight of his people's hopes and struggles on his shoulders. Tonight wasn't just about politics. It was about justice, honesty, and the voice of the powerless finally being heard. As the cameras started rolling, the first words spoken felt like the first drops of a brewing storm. No one could predict what would happen next, but everyone felt it coming. The interview started intense but polite. Trump smiled, confident, ready to dominate the conversation as always. But Ibrahim was different. His voice was steady and strong, carrying the calm determination of a leader who had faced far worse. "I've studied your policies," Ibrahim said quietly but firmly. "And I want the truth to be heard, not the distractions." Trump's smile faltered, his usual swagger meeting a wall of undeniable facts. Ibrahim spoke not with anger, but with honesty, about struggles, broken promises, and real people's pain. The studio fell silent. Millions of viewers sat frozen, hearts pounding. Trump tried to interrupt, to deflect, but Ibrahim's words struck deeper than anyone expected. It was like watching a giant fall slowly, the facade cracking with every honest sentence. People watching at home felt something rare, real truth in a sea of noise. The tension grew unbearable. What would Trump do? Fight harder? Or would something unexpected happen? For a long moment, there was only silence. The cameras zoomed in on Trump's face, his eyes searching, his jaw tight. He was caught off guard, truly off guard. Ibrahim's words had pierced through the usual defenses. The entire studio seemed to hold its breath. Then, slowly, Trump's face changed. The anger melted away, replaced by something none had seen before. Hesitation, doubt, and then he said the words no one thought would ever come from him in public. I apologize," Trump said quietly, almost unwillingly. The room exploded in shock. Millions watched with disbelief, many replaying the moment over and over. The world was stunned. Why now? Why him? What had made Trump drop his pride and admit he was wrong? But the story didn't end there. In fact, it had only just begun. After Trump's unexpected apology, the atmosphere in the studio was thick with disbelief. The cameras kept rolling, but no one dared to speak. Ibrahim Traoré's eyes remained steady, his face calm, but full of quiet strength. What was it that made Trump break his usual armor? What truths had Ibrahim spoken that shook a man who rarely showed weakness? The answer was rooted in the stories Ibrahim carried, stories of people forgotten by powerful nations. He spoke of families torn apart by conflict, of children who went hungry while leaders argued over power. He told of dreams crushed beneath broken promises, and hopes that refused to die. Viewers at home felt their hearts tighten. It wasn't politics anymore. It was human pain and resilience. Ibrahim's words were not attacks, but reflections of harsh realities. He showed a side of leadership driven by compassion and courage, not just power or words. As millions watched, something changed. For the first time, many saw the world through Ibrahim's eyes, and that view was impossible to ignore. The interview moved forward, but the tone had shifted completely. Trump, usually quick to retort, listened. For a fleeting moment, his gaze softened. Ibrahim spoke with a voice filled, not with anger, but with hope. He shared how his people dreamed of peace, justice, and dignity. Things so simple, yet so rare. Power means little if it doesn't protect those who cannot protect themselves, Ibrahim said gently. Leaders are judged not by words, but by the lives they touch. Trump's usual bravado cracked. The viewers saw a man wrestling with his own conscience. This was not a battle of egos anymore, but a moment of real connection. Millions around the world watched in silence, their hearts aching. Some cried quietly as they realized how deeply Ibrahim's message touched something inside all of us, the shared hope for a better tomorrow. As the interview drew on, the studio grew tense again. Trump, struggling with what he had heard, fought to regain control. But the words of Ibrahim had planted seeds of doubt. Suddenly, in a moment that stunned everyone, Trump looked down briefly, then back up with a rare vulnerability. "I have to say, you've made me think," he admitted, voice softer than before. "I didn't expect to hear this tonight. I apologize." The words echoed through the room, rippling across millions of screens worldwide. It was a moment that defied expectations, a powerful leader humbled by the undeniable truth spoken by a man many had underestimated. Viewers everywhere paused. What did this apology mean? Was it genuine? And what would happen next? The story was far from over. The world waited with bated breath. Ibrahim Traoré didn't just speak for himself. He carried the voices of millions. As the cameras captured every word, he shared stories from his country, tales of struggle, resilience, and hope. He spoke of children who woke each day with nothing but a dream, families who survived war's cruelest blows, and communities trying to rebuild from the ashes. His voice was steady but heavy with responsibility. Every word weighed like a stone in the hearts of viewers. Trump listened, the usual sharpness in his eyes softened by a flicker of understanding. It was clear this was no ordinary debate. It was a moment that peeled back layers of power to reveal human truth. Millions watching felt their hearts tighten. Some wiped tears away quietly. The raw honesty of Ibrahim's message struck a chord that echoed far beyond the studio walls. For the first time, many saw a leader not defined by politics, but by a genuine desire to make things right. The conversation took a sharper turn. Trump, struggling to hold on to his usual confidence, challenged Ibrahim's views. But this time it wasn't an argument. It was a clash of worlds. Ibrahim didn't back down. With calm conviction, he answered every question with facts, personal stories, and a vision for peace and justice. Trump's frustration grew, but so did the respect in his eyes. He realized that Ibrahim was more than just a political figure. He was a man with a mission rooted in empathy. Viewers at home felt the tension, the fragile bridge between pride and humility, power and truth. It was as if history itself was being written in that moment. The studio was no longer just a stage. It was a place where two very different lives met and challenged each other to grow. As the interview neared its climax, the air grew thick with anticipation. Ibrahim's words continued to flow, each sentence more powerful than the last. He spoke not just of policies, but of people, of mothers who prayed for their children's safety, of young men who dreamed of peace. Trump's usual fire seemed to dim. The room felt like a quiet battlefield, where silence spoke louder than words. Suddenly, a hush fell over the studio. Trump looked away, then back with a look that revealed something new: vulnerability. It was the moment before the fall, the second before the unexpected. The world held its breath, waiting for the truth that would change everything. No one could have predicted what came next. Ibrahim's voice softened as he spoke about the unseen pain. He described a mother in a remote village who lost her children to hunger and violence. She had no platform, no voice in the corridors of power, but her suffering was real, raw, and heartbreaking. Viewers around the world felt the weight of that story. It wasn't just statistics or political rhetoric. It was life in its most vulnerable form. Trump's eyes narrowed, his jaw clenched. He wasn't used to being confronted with such raw honesty. Yet, something about Ibrahim's quiet strength stirred something deeper inside him. The studio lights seemed dimmer now, shadows cast across the faces of the hosts and guests. The audience, both live and virtual, was silent, listening to a truth they rarely heard. Ibrahim wasn't just fighting for his country. He was reminding the world of its forgotten souls, challenging leaders everywhere to look beyond themselves. Trump, long seen as unshakable, found himself at a rare crossroads. The usual defenses, sharp comebacks, and bold declarations faltered. Ibrahim spoke of unity, compassion, and the courage to admit when you are wrong. A leader's greatest strength, he said, is knowing when to listen. Trump's face revealed the struggle within, a man wrestling with pride and the reality before him. Millions of viewers sensed this moment of vulnerability. Comments flooded social media. Did Trump just show humility? This is not the Trump we know. It was a clash not of politics, but of character. Ibrahim's words weren't just heard, they were felt. And somewhere deep inside, a wall began to crack. Then it happened. In a voice quieter than expected, but heavy with meaning, Trump said the words no one expected. I apologize. The room fell into stunned silence. Cameras captured every micro-expression. Disbelief, shock, even relief. Millions paused their lives to watch the moment replayed again and again. Was this real? Was this a turning point? For Ibrahim, it was a victory, not of pride, but of truth and courage. The apology wasn't just for him, it was for every unheard voice, every forgotten struggle. The world watched as two very different men, bound by a rare moment of honesty, changed the course of history. The studio lights dimmed, but the impact of that apology lit up the world. News outlets exploded with the headline, "Trump apologizes to Ibrahim Traoré, a moment of history." Social media buzzed non-stop as millions shared their disbelief, hope, and tears. But the real story was the ripple effect beyond the screens. In small villages, people heard the news and dared to dream again. Mothers whispered prayers of hope. Young children looked to the future with bright eyes. Ibrahim's courage was no longer just his. It was theirs. At that moment, leadership took a new shape, not of power or dominance, but of humility and humanity. Trump's rare apology was not just a political gesture. It was a reminder that even the most powerful could listen, change, and admit when they were wrong. And for millions, that was a moment worth crying over, a moment that spoke to the deepest parts of the human heart. After the cameras stopped rolling, behind closed doors, the weight of the exchange settled deeply in both men. Ibrahim, exhausted but resolute, thought of the long journey that led him here. The struggles, sacrifices, and countless voices behind his words. Trump, away from the spotlight, replayed the conversation in his mind. The honesty he faced was undeniable. Neither man was the same as before. It was a moment rare in history, a moment when pride met truth and something fragile but powerful was born. The apology echoed far beyond the TV studio. It reached into hearts, stirring feelings many thought lost. Ibrahim stood firm in his belief that change begins with truth. He looked beyond the headlines to the real work ahead. We can only move forward when we face our mistakes, he said softly to his closest team. This apology is a beginning, not an end. For millions watching, Ibrahim became a symbol of hope, a leader who fought not for glory, but for justice and compassion. The world felt the power of those simple words, the weight of real leadership. And though the road ahead was long, this moment marked a turning point. a promise that honesty and courage could change the course of history. The tears shed were not just for pain, but for hope rekindled. The interview was over, but the world's attention remained fixed on what had just unfolded. Ibrahim Traoré quietly returned to his duties, carrying the weight of hope and change on his shoulders. For him, the apology was not an end, but a responsibility. He thought of the children who had no voice, the families shattered by conflict, and the countless people who needed more than just words. They needed action. Meanwhile, Trump faced a moment of deep reflection. For a man so accustomed to strength and control, admitting fault was a humbling experience. It marked a shift, a rare moment of true leadership born from listening. In that silence, two very different men shared a human moment, a moment that millions wished could happen more often in a divided world. Across continents, reactions poured in. Some doubted, others hoped, but all were touched by the moment's humanity. Social media flooded with messages of support for Ibrahim, praising his courage and integrity. Many saw him as the voice of the unheard, the hope for a brighter future. Families gathered around screens, wiping tears as they saw a powerful leader stand tall with honesty and compassion. For many, this wasn't just politics. It was a reminder that change is possible when courage meets truth. The apology had sparked a global conversation, one that went beyond headlines to touch the very heart of what it means to lead. As the dust settled, Ibrahim stood before a crowd in his homeland, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "This moment is not mine alone," he said. "It belongs to everyone who believes in justice, hope, and change. And that's where you come in. If this story touched your heart, if you believe in the power of truth and courage, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video to show your support, subscribe to join this journey of hope, and most importantly, comment below. Tell us how this story moved you. Share your thoughts and emotions. Your voice matters. Together, we can keep the conversation alive, inspire change, and stand with leaders like Ibrahim Traoré who remind us that even in the darkest moments, light can shine. Thank you for being part of this story.